Greetings, friends, and Firebirds fans, and welcome to the Fire and Ice podcast presented by Desert Willow Golf Resort. Fire and Ice, the official podcast of your Coachella Valley Firebirds of the American Hockey League. Coming to you from Palm Desert, California, a mere Devon Shore wraparound away from the Birds' home ice of Acrisure Arena. I'm your host, Judd Spicer. Along with this regular endeavor, also again have the privilege and the pleasure of serving as your Firebirds insider. Those articles, which now, may I add, have a microscopic playoff preview focus. Those articles can be found online, as with all things Firebirds, at cvfirebirds.com. You can find everything on there. It's your home and your hub, including, not limited to, team, roster, merchandise, scheduling, community, ticket information. Per those tickets to Acrisure Arena, might I also suggest downloading the very handy CV Firebirds app. Great and easy way to get tickets for all the CV Firebirds playoff games. Also a pretty convenient way to line up your parking for Acrisure Arena. Per the presenting sponsor of this endeavor, Desert Willow Golf Resort, a mere 3+ miles away from Acrisure Arena, home to the Mountain View and Firecliff courses, respectively, although it may be noted per the latter, Firecliff is going to be undergoing a greens renovation here in the very near future. I think they're also going to be leveling some tee boxes. That's not until mid-May, however. Nonetheless, awesome time, sweet time, kind of a sneaky time to get your golf on here in the desert. I always like these shoulder seasons. It's not melty, still some great temps, and again, a perfect way. You know I love the putt-to-puck segue. Get your tee times online at desertwillow.com and then skate it on over that 3.5 miles, I want to say it is, to Acrisure Arena for a Birds playoff game. All right, friends, not alone on this episode, this playoff episode of the Fire and Ice podcast. Got a media roundtable and a great panel it is joining me on this episode. We'll visit with them shortly. Blake Arthur, our pal Blake, sports director, of course, at local KESQ. Shad Powers, columnist for the Desert Sun newspaper. And guest number 3, we're going north of the border. We're going in the opposite box, the other locker room. For this great guest, we're going to welcome Matt Rose. He's the color analyst for the Calgary Wranglers, along with serving as co-host of The Big Show with Rusick and Rose on Sportsnet 690, The Fan, out of Calgary. Preceding the panel visit and the media roundtable, however, yours truly have been called out on this in recent days, over the course of the past week, and deservedly so. I'm eating some crow on this show. I did not expect Calgary to be here as the 7th seed. I don't think in the last show I even gave our seasonal record versus Calgary. I very much believe I told the most recent episode's guest, Andrew Podorowski, that wasn't even worthy of discussion, the chance that we would again face Calgary in the playoffs. And let's be honest, Calgary was not that good during the regular season. They had 24 fewer standing points than they did last year in winning the Pacific. They claimed the 7th and final playoff seed this season out of the Pacific. Obviously, that dynamic has changed. Brief review. This Friday passed, of course, following an 11-day stretch of non-game days for the Firebirds by virtue of earning that first round bye. Birds fell in Game 1 against our former foe from last year in these division semifinals. This best of 5, 2 games in Calgary, final 3 games in the Coachella Valley if necessary, and we got handled pretty well. We looked rusty. We looked like a team that hadn't played for 11 straight days. Losing that game 4-1, of course, the latter 2 goals from the Wranglers were empty netters, but candidly, at least from my perch in the bird's nest, Wranglers look bigger, they look stronger, they look faster, they look more motivated to go out and win that first game on their home ice, and they did so decidedly. That, of course, segued to a crucial Game 2 this Sunday past. Watched it with many of you, had the pleasure of sitting with many of you at the very tense viewing party at Spotlight 29 Casino. And to me, friends, and I think that we cumulatively felt this, whether you were watching at the viewing party or you're watching at a different locale or in the comfort of your own home or on some mobile device, that was the season. Game 2 would have been the season. I was very skeptical of the Firebirds' chances of winning the series, candidly. Had they not captured Game 2, which of course they did 4-3 in overtime by virtue of the aforementioned Devon Shore wraparound goal. I just simply didn't see in a scenario where the Birds would be down 0-2 to win 3 straight games against last year's MVP and the 2-time goalie of the year, Dustin Wolf. I simply didn't see a scenario, whether it be on our ice, a pond, any ice. I know we're coming back here, friends, but I simply didn't see a situation where we were going to beat Dustin Wolf in 3 consecutive games, and now we don't need to. Really tense Game 2, of course. For the first time in 7 games, it might be noted, the Birds got out in front. That, of course, dating the regular season. Cole Lind got us on the board after a scoreless first period. Subsequently, the Birds came back from deficits of 1-2 and 2-3. That equalizer from captain Max McCormick with about 5 minutes to play could have been a season saver, dudes. Ultimately, again, as mentioned, Devon Shore got it done for the Birds in overtime. And now we return for those 3 consecutive games here in our nest of Acrisure Arena. Need to win 2 of them. Let's go briefly through the schedule. This Wednesday, May 8th, 7 p.m. puck drop. Game 3 of the Pacific Division semifinals, I should say, against Calgary. No longer need the asterisk for needed Game 4. That is no longer if necessary, because it is necessary. This Friday, May 10th, also a 7 p.m. start. Birds hosting Calgary, and we can re-implement the asterisk if needed for a potential Game 5. Would take place this Sunday, May 12th. CV hosting Calgary. That would be a 3 p.m. Pacific puck drop. Across the 2 games, 5 different goals for the Birds, it should be noted, coming from 5 different players in the net. Chris Drieger never played an AHL playoff game before, been pretty darn solid. Should add that he's played 3 NHL Stanley Cup playoff games, but breaking his maiden in the AHL, of the 58 shots he has faced from the Wranglers, he has stopped 53 of them. In the opposite net, the aforementioned Dustin Wolf, and we've had his number. Wolf has been phenomenal, but I think statistically the Firebirds have scored a little more than a goal a game against Wolf than has the rest of the American Hockey League across the past 2 seasons. Got 66 shots on Dustin Wolf in these 2 games and change, overtime considered. He has stopped 61 of those goals. Far more conversation, many more metrics, prediction, analysis, fun. Let's get to the media roundtable with our guys Blake Arthur, Shad Powers, and Matt Rose to discuss the rest and the upcoming games in this rather exciting, rather tense Pacific Division semifinal. Coachella Valley Firebirds versus the Calgary Wranglers.
All right, friends. As prefaced earlier in this episode, we've got a good one. It's a quadrant, it's a panel, it's a media roundtable. So we are now deep in the throes of the Pacific Division semifinal. Allow me to introduce and re-welcome our desert friends, Blake Arthur, sports director at KESQ, Shad Powers, columnist for the Desert Sun newspaper. Gents?
Great to be here, as always. Thanks, Shad.
Yeah, Shad, thanks. Ready to talk some hockey.
Always happy to have you guys rejoin, and we welcome a new friend, a neighbor to the north. We go to the opposing bench with Matt Rose. He is the Calgary Wranglers color analyst and co-host of The Big Show. I'm probably going to butcher your co-host names, Rusick and Rose on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Did I butcher your co-host name, Matt?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. I don't worry about him too much. All
right.
George Russick. Yeah, he runs the ship, but it's no, don't worry about him. It's fine.
Let's not worry about him. Let's worry about you. And let's start with you, Matt. Appreciate you joining. Fear not. Not total enemy territory here. Although it could have been. I mean, you got to feel after last night's Game 2 that you guys let the Firebirds off the ropes, man.
Well, yeah, that's what it looked like the team did yesterday. I thought in Game 1 they came out and they were really physical and maybe took advantage of a team that had not played in that kind of 3-game play-in series that we saw Calgary beat Tucson. And then in Game 2, Coachella Valley able to get to their game a little bit more another tight contest, no goals through 40, and then things just all of a sudden opened up, and it felt like the goals were coming every time you looked up, and then get to overtime, and a tough one. The Wranglers just can't seem to get over this Firebirds team in overtime. You go back to last year's postseason when they played for the division, and the Firebirds, of course, won the 6-5 game to clinch the series, won a little bit earlier with on the Riker Evans overtime goal too. So overtime's been tough for this Wranglers team, but at the same time, you swept the 2 seed, you split with the 1 seed, you really felt like you let that one get away. You had a chance to win it, and now you got to go down to Coachella Valley and try and do it on the road.
Yeah, and we'll certainly come back to the games that are ahead. Follow-up for you, Matt. Your head coach, Trent Cull, I think he was asked several times after the game last night if the AHL did have replay beyond goals. There was a little controversy to the close of that game. Was there a flint of metal maybe on the ice to cause an offside? But he was gentlemanly in his response. He just said, I thought it was a good goal. I thought it played out fine. He acknowledged the lack of replay. I don't know in Calgary today if there's a little controversy about how that game ended.
Yeah, I expected Trent Cull to take the diplomatic route here because there's 3 games left in the series. You know, Jacob Pelche certainly got his money's worth as the referees were leaving the ice surface yesterday. When we saw the replay, it looked like he still had his 1 foot still on the ice as the entry was coming back in there. So, you know, to me, I think that if there is video review, the game maybe is still being played. Alas, that's not the way it goes, and it's a tough one to swallow. I think that's definitely part of the heartbreak too. Is that when the Firebirds started to push and they started to put the puck in the net, the Wranglers were able to push back. You know, they tie it at 1, they take the lead, and then the Firebirds come back. But you really felt like that was one where you could kind of get over that overtime hump, and to lose that way, like I understand the frustration for the players because now it's got to feel like one of those things where, you know, you outplayed the Firebirds in that contest, but you didn't get the result you wanted.
And as Matt referenced, per the close games in the playoffs against these 2 squads across the last 2 years, we've now got 5 cumulatively in the books, 3 of which have gone to OT. Let's take it to you, Shad Powers. Mm-hmm. You wrote recently about the sour taste left in the Firebirds' mouth based on, obviously, the Calder Cup finals result from last year and the runner-up finish. In watching the first 2 games of this series, which are our first 2 games of these Calder Cup playoffs, do you feel that the Firebirds played with that same sour taste desperation that they spoke to you about?
It didn't seem like it in the first game, and I know people like to talk about the rest versus rust, which I'm on record as being like I don't like that discussion until I just think it's kind of a moot point until someone until a coach tells me that they intentionally lost, so they couldn't get a bye, those kind of things. But I think they didn't come out with a fire. And when I talked to them about that, of course, we were talking about it in terms of getting back to the Calder Cup. And to a man, they of course said, of course we want to get back there, but you can't look ahead. You gotta worry about each series as it comes. And I think when it became clear it was going to be Calgary, I think that might have got their spirits up a little bit, or at least I would have imagined it was, because I think it's fair to say Calgary was their biggest rival last year in their both literally and sort of in their minds. So I think when it was Calgary, I expected them to really come out with a lot of fire, and they sort of, not that they didn't, you can have a lot of fire and still not score goals, but it just didn't seem like they had the same pep in their step that we've seen the last, basically in 2024. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I guess I'm looking particularly at some of the young players. I was expecting them to, if not score and contribute in that way, to really be a factor, like they have been for the last 4 months. But as we saw, basically every goal scored up in Calgary was by a veteran. So that's one thing, I guess, looking forward, that I think the Firebirds need and would like to see some, more production out of their young guys, which was a huge part of their regular season.
Yeah, that's a point I'm going to come back to as well, about the Firebirds, baby birds. Let's turn it to you, Blake Arthur. You interviewed several members of the Firebirds during the downtime, along with head coach Dan Bilesma. Interesting note, Calgary, of course, earned the bye last year, they had, I think it was one fewer day off than we ultimately had this year, which was a long time. I mean, when speaking with
Yeah.
those guys or speaking with Coach Blake, I know that they gave you kind of some of the company line answers, but did you get a sense that that many days off, that many non-game days consecutively was too long? Did the players give you that sense at all, or coach for that matter?
Without a doubt. Dan was pretty candid in his response. He said it was painstakingly agonizing. He didn't like it at all. And I think, he mentioned that, yes, it's good for the team to get the bye. It shows that they were first and all that good stuff. And kind of to Shad's point, it's not like you're playing for second place. But I think for this team, they were rolling. I mean, ever since the new year, they were like literally unstoppable. There was like they were just mowing teams down. And then for them to just like halt, stop for a week, I think that definitely impacted things, certainly in game one. And then in game two, I feel like they kind of got their legs a little bit in the third period. But to Matt's point, yeah, I mean, if I'm Calgary, I'm like, we outplayed these guys 2 games and we should be 2-0. The Wranglers, obviously with Dustin Wolf and net, best goalie in the league, but they seem to, really impose the physicality and kind of dirty up the game a little bit, muck it up, kind of make it ugly, where Coachella Valley likes to play that fluid, fast pace, kind of pretty brand of hockey. So, yeah, no, back to your question, Chad. I definitely think the bye hurt this team. I think now, though, they know that they split and now they have 3 at home and they're going to be tough to beat. I think Calgary kind of missed their opportunity. We'll see what happens. Obviously, you never know in playoff hockey, but if I'm the Firebirds, happy with the split, happy to be at home, and happy really just to be playing hockey, which is where they do their best work.
Segue it back to Matt, of course, the style that we saw, the very effective style from Calgary last year. They were excellent at clogging things up, real playoff style hockey. A team definitely built for playoff style hockey in many different ways, among them leading the league in the penalty kill. This year's Calgary Wranglers, I think 24 fewer rather standing points than their Pac division win last year. Firebirds handled them readily, 6-2 record against Calgary in 8 games. They got in as the 7th seed. Obviously, you got some guys back, as Blake referenced Dustin Wolf among them, and we'll come back to him. But have the Wranglers just like woken up in the playoffs here all of a sudden, Matt? They're undoubtedly playing much better than they did the regular season.
I just think that this was a year where there was a lot of opportunity for young players like Coronado and Wolf to actually have an opportunity in the NHL. And with a lot more of the kind of travel back and forth between the leagues, I think it's just harder to keep your focus. And as a result, for a lot of the year, especially late when Matt Coronado got recalled, they lost a ton of offense and they were losing a lot of games down the stretch. It felt like they were shorthanded. But now you've got all these guys back. You have the big team out of the playoffs. So the sole focus has become this Calder Cup playoffs. And as much as, the Firebirds were resting and getting ready for the postseason, like some of the Wranglers ended up playing late into the regular season with the big club too. So I think that's a factor. Just that this team for a lot of the season, guys were up and down and there were injuries. Brett Sutter missed a lot of the season. Dryden Hunt missed a lot of the season. So to me, there was just a lot of guys that you never really saw maybe the full lineup that we're seeing in the postseason through courses of the regular season. And as a result, now that everyone's here, everyone's focused on one certain goal. You've already taken out a 2 seed, so you're confident that you can hang with the big cats. And then on top of that, you're able to take advantage. I was a little bit surprised that Coachella Valley wanted the series to start in Calgary, just kind of given what you guys are talking about a little bit with that long layoff and starting the series on the road. Maybe wanted to do a little bit less travel there, but at the same time, now it's a best of 3, and Coachella Valley gets to host all 3 of them. So we'll get to see how it ends up in the end. But especially if Calgary had won that second game, I think that would have been a big question as the series shifts back down to the really nice weather.
Yeah, I think had things not gone the Firebirds' way in game 2, had we not got the equalizer from Max McCormick with just 5 minutes and change left, obviously, had we not won in overtime, I guess, and it hurts me to say this, but I kind of feel like the series was over. And I say that because to beat Dustin Wolf 3 games in a row,
I don't know if that is realistic. I don't know if there are 15 NHL teams in that could beat Dustin Wolf 3 games in a row at this point. I mean, he is a budding superstar. He is an NHL caliber goalie in the AHL playoffs. Would you disagree with that in any way, Matt?
Nope. Listen, this is a guy who won 4 games down the stretch. Is he wrapped up his NHL season? There were some games he had this year that certainly it looked like the moment got a little bit big for him. But anybody who's even that caliber of a netminder making that jump from the A to the NHL, that's tough to do. But the most encouraging thing was as the stretch kind of went on there for the regular season. He got plenty of starts, kind of rotating with Jacob Markstrom, being around a guy who, has been a very good goaltender in the NHL. And then he won his last 4 starts. He looked good in all of them. He goes down to Tucson. He has the 46 save shutout in game number 1. All of a sudden, confidence is at an all-time high. I think he's an NHL goaltender. I think he's going to be one of their 2 guys next year. The question is, how does management get there? But yeah, without a doubt, two-time goalie of the year, 1-time AHL MVP. It's just about time for the Flames to try and find a way to get him up to the next level. But for now, he'll see if he can steal some games and maybe steal himself a trophy on the way out of the A.
Shad, you referenced the Firebirds youth movement. I mean, Jacob Melanson, I thought availed himself pretty well in both of the games. He had a great assist in the first game for the Firebirds' lone goal. But you also referenced the other young guys, whether it be Shane Wright, Logan Morrison, Ryan Winterton, Billy Otavainen, Riker Evans, I should add. I mean, he played exceptionally well. I thought he was our best player over the first 2 games. But extend what you were saying about the young Firebirds, Shad, because to me that was a real concern. We didn't see a lot of them, didn't hear their names announced a lot,
Right.
not a lot of points accrued by any of those guys. I don't know if the moment was a little too big for them coming out of the gate in these playoffs, or what was your assessment?
Yeah, I guess that's been kind of one of the big question marks, one of the only question marks, I guess you could say, around the Firebirds is, will the young guys that played so well during the regular season, produce in the playoffs the same way? Will their eyes be too big at that moment? You don't expect that from those guys, all of whom have also been up with the Kraken at least for a little bit this year. But yeah, I was a little surprised by their lack of output. Like I said, and the whole team might have been caught off guard a little bit by losing that first game because, as you remember, they won the first game in all 5 playoff series last year, and they scored 5 goals or 6 goals in all 5 of those games. So every series they immediately had the upper hand. So I don't know if that, the day off in between, what they were sort of talking about, it was sort of a new territory even for the veterans on the team. But yeah, I'd like to see. I mean, yeah, of course, Firebirds fans would like to see Shane Wright, Winterton, that line. I think they're playing with Cameron Hughes. I'm surprised for that line to go 2 games, without producing any points. I don't know what you guys think.
Blake, taking a look at the personnel for yourself, is there anything in particular that jumped out to you, whether somebody that overperformed, somebody that underperformed? I know we don't get in a real habit here of like calling out guys for not playing well. We haven't had a lot of reasons to do so in the still fewer than 2 years of Firebirds hockey, but along those same personnel lines, anything that jumped out to you, man?
Not really. I think you guys kind of touched on it. I think the veterans really carried the day in that game too. I mean, you look at the goals down the stretch. Podorowski, who has history with the Wranglers and certainly loves playing against them. And then the captain, Max McCormick, who led the team in goals all season. It was hard for me to tell. I had some family and friends over, but it looked like it was like off his skate and in. I mean, it was just kind of there's a lot of traffic in front of the net there. So, I mean, yeah, it's nice to see the veterans step up. I think the big question mark, and really I addressed this with Chris before the playoffs, is really Driedger. How is he going to do? Obviously, Joey Decor was so great last year. How is he going to do? But, with a team like Calgary, not much firepower. I think, anytime the Firebirds get a lead, it's like, they got to play ahead, right? They're the horse that, like, give them the lead and they're going to close the deal. So yeah, I'm interested to see how Driedger does in net these last 3 or 2, however many it goes. But I kind of see this going 5. It's just kind of the way it is between these two teams. But yeah, the rookies got to step up, as you guys mentioned. I mean, Winterton, Wright, Shane Wright took a hard hit last night's game. So I wonder how he's feeling. But yeah, that's really kind of my take on the lineup and personnel.
Friends, are tuning in to the Fire and Ice podcast presented by Desert Willow Golf Resorts, a media roundtable here amid the tension of the Pacific Division semifinals, Firebirds versus Calgary Flames. My guests are Blake Arthur, Shad Powers, and Matt Rose joining us, our neighbor to the north. Let's go back to you here, Matt. As we play now a best of 3, all here in Palm Desert, kind of a two-part question, which I'll ask all you guys. What gives you hope that the Wranglers can pull this thing off here in Southern California? And what is your greatest fear for how these games are going to play out here in the desert?
I would say that what gives me hope is the last 2 games that we just saw, where I felt like the Wranglers obviously played close to, if not better than the Firebirds for a lot of those 60-minute games up in Calgary. So if you can keep doing that, I think that you're going to have some faith. As soon as you got Dustin Wolf starting between the pipes, I think that you feel like you've got a really strong chance to win any one of those games. And if you can keep your kind of defensive structure in shape and get a couple of goals from some of these young players that are playing up the lineup and responsible for the offense, then you feel really good about it. Now, my problem would be, do some of these young guys start waking up for Coachella Valley? Like Shane Wright, when he has the puck on his stick, you can tell that there is a ton of talent there. But like you guys mentioned, there hasn't been a lot on the score sheet. There's been a couple of giveaways in the offensive zone where he's throwing the puck to places without kind of looking for a pass, and it's leading to turnovers. He did take that hard hit, but if some of these young guys start going for Coachella Valley and they become a team that can score with more than just their top line, all of a sudden you've got yourself a little bit of a problem. And I also do wonder if legs become a little bit of an issue for Calgary, as they've been going 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. And there's some veterans in that lineup. Adam Klapka is essentially playing 2 shifts every rotation through. So he's doing it for now. He's a chaos factor every time he's on the ice, and he can create offense, he can create energy, but can he do it for 23 minutes a night, every night, in and out? We'll find out.
I guess my own fear might be the just reference Klapka and go back to his first goal of the series, maybe the best and most impressive goal we'll see the entire series, as he navigated and skated around the entirety of all 6 of the Firebirds Icemen for a beautiful goal. Shad Powers, your biggest hope for the Firebirds being able to pull this off, extend the playoff run, and your greatest fear that we won't be able to do it.
Right. Well, I think one thing that is giving me hope is we talked about the veterans and we talked about the young guys, but there's also some of these acquisitions that were not on the team last year. Devin Shore, obviously, humongous contribution. There, Connor Carrick. These guys are veterans of the wars, but they just haven't been on the Firebirds before. Adding guys like that, I think, are, give the team sort of a depth that they didn't have last year. And then if everybody else sort of does what they did in the regular season, I think they'll be in good shape. But having veterans around to help out in those tense in between moments, I think, is a valuable thing that gives me hope for this team. Of course, coming home, it's been a while, I think, since they've lost 2 out of 3 at home, meaningful games. But what gives me fear is just the Calgary in general. I think there would have been a lot of other opponents you would have rather seen in this short series. They're not going to come into Acrisure Arena on Wednesday night with big eyes and like, whoa, what's happening around here? They lived it. They've already been through it last year. Of course, with Wolf, always reason to fear him. And like Matt said, let's face it, why wouldn't they be confident coming in? They played 2 great games. They sort of seem to have a recipe for success against the Firebirds, clogging up the middle a little bit. They've got the physical guys that can do that. So, the blueprint is there. It's not like they're going to come in here to Acrisure Arena and be overwhelmed or not sure what to do. Calgary is the exact type of opponent that, I think you don't want to see if you're the Firebirds, in that they're confident, veteran-led, and they've been in this situation before.
Yeah, and to Shad's point, look, we probably did not expect
be facing the Wranglers in this series. It's not as though we aren't familiar with one another. Played 8 times this year, a vast history from last year's inaugural season and all the dramatics in the playoffs. Maybe somewhere in their mind, they just had it that they were going to play Abbotsford or they were going to play the Colorado Eagles, whichever team won that series. Maybe an outside chance of playing Bakersfield, but I don't think that they anticipated that they would play Dustin Wolf and the Calgary Wranglers. And to me, that really showed in the first game. We looked rusty, we looked a little ill prepared, and we looked less motivated, to be candid, than the Wranglers did. Of course, now 1-1, and we're coming back here. Bring the same question to you, Blake Arthur, as this series plays out here in the desert. Your biggest hope for the Birds extending their playoff run, biggest fear that they won't get it done.
Well, I'm going to be pretty cliche with my biggest hope. I think them being at home is obviously a major boost. I mean, we've seen this team rally behind the fans. I imagine it'll be a sold out electric atmosphere. And, also let's look at the regular season and what this team has done. I mean, ever since the inception of this franchise, they've been, the best team. Calgary obviously finished first last year, but they ended up beating them. But the talent is there. I mean, they just have the horses. They have the guys to do it. My biggest fear, though, is, well, they got a guy over there who, kind of like in baseball, if you have an ace pitcher that's going out there, he can basically control the game. So if Dustin Wolf gets hot, look out. And I think Calgary, this is a great matchup. Just as a viewer, right? You got the talent, the speed, the finesse of the Firebirds, and you got this like kind of fun style to watch. It's like ugly, physical, just like old school brand of hockey, which I respect the hell out of Calgary. I think they're a well coached hockey team that play the right way. And I think that really gives the Firebirds some fits. And I talked to Dan, obviously, before the playoffs, and he said that, it was a point of emphasis for Coachella Valley to get a little bit more physical, because I think the book on them is that, yeah, they're a really good team. But if we can get under their skin and rough things up and, get them out of their game. I mean, they were taking a lot of penalties, right? I've never seen the Firebirds take so many penalties. So I think Calgary's got that a little bit on them. And if that kind of gives me a little bit of pause in picking the Firebirds to win this series. So, it's a great matchup. It's a fun series to watch, and I expect to go 5, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, to Blake's point there, for the penalties, Captain Max McCormick, I think he had 8 minutes worth of penalties before his game-tying goal last night. Certainly something to keep watch on. A couple more for you today, gents. We'll bring it back to Matt Rose. And Matt, this might be kind of provincial, but this is in essence what happened to the Wranglers last year, in that you lost your head coach. He was the 2-time coach of the year. He's now an assistant coach with the NHL. Our situation here with Dan Bilesma and Blake, to date, as far as I know, has been the only local media member to actually ask Dan in recent weeks, since Seattle parted ways with Dave Haxtell. Just asked Dan his thoughts, and we all knew what the answer would be to that question, that he wasn't going to address it. But I give Blake credit for asking. I wonder if any of us will ask come the post-game press conferences that are to come. Again,
wouldn't do it after a loss.
I was going to say, I get a hope for a 5-1 win to ask that question. But it happened to you and your team and your coach of the year, Matt. Just wondering, being in Canada, this is now a national story regarding Bilesma and the Kraken. Sportsnet, the Hockey News, ESPN, Score.com, both picked up on this. If you have any thoughts on that for yourself from north of the border, could these be Bilesma's last games here in the desert?
Yeah, I think they definitely could. Like, it's going to be the type of thing where throughout the playoffs, is he going to talk about it? Probably not. Like, this is a team that has a chance to, go to the final and lose to Hershey, like a lot of teams in the AHL, I guess. But listen, this is a huge opportunity for them. The Kraken no longer have their head coach. They had some exit interviews that didn't go well, and they've got some young players up there that Bilesma would know. Like, obviously, Ty Cartier, Riker Evans played 30-plus games up in the NHL this year, but there's a relationship there from last season. Shane Wright's another one. But when you're kind of looking around the NHL, there's going to be a lot of coaching vacancies, and we have to find out what's up with Mike Sullivan and John Cooper and Rod Brindamore. But if you're the Kraken, I don't know if you're looking at one of those guys. I think Bilesma would be great. Someone who, went into Pittsburgh, was outstanding in Pittsburgh, short end of the stick in Buffalo, and just an awful situation with Jack Eichel unhappy and Ryan O'Reilly getting traded out of there. I think that this is a guy, look at the track record for this AHL team. And this is an AHL team being a new franchise that's filled with a lot of veterans. Like, if he can take this team on another run and get a couple of key guys going, like especially if Shane Wright can kind of find his groove in this postseason, I think he should definitely be a candidate. Someone that I think a lot of people expect to see in the NHL. I know 32 Thoughts up here with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. They've talked about Bilesma being someone that's obviously in contention for this Kraken job. So, listen, certainly in the cards. He's shown that he can do it with this AHL team as a head coach, and I'd love to see him come back.
Shad Powers, whether this season goes to Friday, although we hope it goes much longer, or maybe till the end of June, do you think that these are Dan Bilesma's last games, this playoff run, last games with the Firebirds?
I think it's possible, of course. Matt, all the points Matt made are logical, but I don't know. There's something about it that makes me think I'm not 100% sure that Ron Francis is, not, it feels like he could still go with some of his NHL, other friends and people. It is interesting though, when you're trying to fill a coaching job, there's kind of two ways to go. You can stay within the system and move someone up like Dan, or you can go with someone that has great NHL experience. Luckily, Dan has both, so he is a primo candidate. There's no doubt, and it would be, there's a lot of good reasons to do that. But at the same time, I just don't know if I'm getting the body language or the vibes from up there that they're like just waiting for Bilesma's season to be over so they can hold a press conference. I don't know if I'm not sure if I'm feeling that. That's just like, a gut feeling. And then also, of course, there's the alternative that the Kraken could go in a different direction. And then that would also probably prompt Bilesma to consider the other NHL jobs if he doesn't see a path forward here anymore. I mean, he told us all, I think, before this season, and I guess I kind of believe him, that he's not going to just take any NHL job because he does like the situation he's in here. But he did express a desire to be back in the NHL. So one way or the other, I guess if I had to put money on it, yes, I do believe this will be Bilesma's last stand. But I think I'm less confident in that than most people.
Blake Arthur, you asked him the question one-on-one and one-on-one setting before the playoffs started. We know the answer he gave you was kind of a non-answer answer, but Shad mentioned the phrase body language. Did you get any extra feel there? Do you think that this will be Dan Bilesma's last run in the desert?
I do. I think it's dependent though on what this team does. Like if they get bounced here by the Wranglers, I think he'll stick around. But if they go all the way to the finals again, I think he'll get the job. The problem is the Kraken going to wait 2 months to make a decision? That's where like the weird part is. But I think Dan wants to get back to the show. He's a competitive guy. We all know that. You can tell he coaches with like this, I don't know, this like chip on his shoulder, like something has got this guy's, he's just got a burning desire. I don't know who pissed him off or something, but he's got this chip on his shoulder that's like he wants to get back to the show. But at the same time, I think that he's really happy here. How could you not be? The franchise is first class. The desert is beautiful. He plays golf. All the reasons that we like being here. But I think he can really make an impact at the AHL level. Not to say he can't with the NHL level, but I think he really enjoys teaching and coaching. I think he gets through these guys and kind of enjoys seeing them kind of take the next step. So yeah, I think the Birds will make a run. I think he'll make the leap, and I'll miss him because he's a great soundbite.
I'm gonna agree with you on both counts. I think we do make a run, and I do think that he's going to get that Kraken job. Maybe the Kings job that could be in play for him, given his Rob Blake friendship, guy that he played with for a long time. They had an intern head coach, got knocked out of the playoffs by the Oilers. We'll see. Blake, finish this with you, man. The predictions I was going to ask all you guys for, I think you gave it. You believe the Firebirds are going to get this done in 5 games. By virtue of, I don't believe we can beat Dustin Wolf 3 times in a row. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say at this point it's going to be Birds in 5. You're sticking by that, Blake Arthur?
I'm sticking by that. I think if Calgary took game 2, they would have won the series in like 4, but they kind of missed their opportunity. And now Coachella Valley, tough to beat them twice out of 3 at home.
Shad Powers, your prediction for the remainder of this series?
Just to be a little different, I'll say that I think now the Firebirds will win it in 4. I'm just going to say that. I think yesterday's game is going to have a lasting effect into Wednesday night. So I'm feeling like perhaps the Firebirds will, take advantage of maybe like a little bit of a dispirited Flames team. Then Calgary is going to come back with all guns blazing for game 4. Probably another classic overtime thriller. And I'll say that, somehow the Firebirds find a way to pull that out. Like you said, beating Dustin Wolf 3 times in a row is a sort of a crazy thing to predict. But I feel like Wednesday's game is going to be difficult, I guess, for the Flames, whether they want to admit it or not, to I'm sorry, the Wranglers, whether they want to admit it or not, to bounce right back and be just as good as they were in games 1 and 2.
Matt Rose,
if I may,
go ahead.
Sorry, Juddy, really quick, before Matt gives his pick, I actually did think Calgary was going to win this series. I never voiced that publicly or anything, but I did think before the series started that Calgary they were going to take game 1 just by virtue of the bye and the rust and all that. And then game 2, I thought that they were going to ride the home crowd momentum, blah, blah, blah. So I had the Wranglers win the series, but too late now. Anyway, sorry, Matt.
You might be right.
No worries. We passed that on. Matt, we went 3-1 against you here with the Desert Dudes against the neighbor to the north. Finish up with you, Matt. Your thoughts on if Calgary can get this down in the desert, or if the Firebirds are going to play on?
I like the game plan for the Wranglers right now. I think that one of the things that has not yet come to roost is the power play, and if they can actually get their power play going, all of a sudden this is a team that can score a couple of goals. And like all of you guys have mentioned, you got Dustin Wolf between the pipes. I'm going to take the Herd in 5, but yeah, I'm fired up for these games now. I wish I was down in the desert with you guys, because that's going to be a fun atmosphere to be in.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you visiting with us, and you are always welcome in the Coachella Valley, man. Game 3, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. puck drop at Acrisure Arena. Game 4, we have removed the asterisk. It is now necessary. That is Friday night at 7, and still, if needed, a deciding Game 5 would be this Sunday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. I should specify that for your friends and listeners, Matt. That would also be here at Acrisure Arena. Been a fascinating, intense series to date. I trust it's going to play out that way, gentlemen. Blake Arthur, Shad Powers, Matt Rose, all appreciative of your time, boys. Thank you so much for joining the Fire and Ice podcast.
Thanks, Judd. Always a blast. Don't forget, Sunday, Game 5 is Mother's Day.
Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun. Cheers.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Firebirds flock. It's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Fire and Ice podcast presented by Desert Willow Golf Resort. So appreciative of your time, your interest, your ears, your ongoing support of this endeavor. Equal appreciation goes to this episode's guests. Great roundtable. I want to thank Blake Arthur, Shad Powers for their time locally. I want to thank our new pal north of the border, Matt Rose, the color analyst for the Wranglers, and the co-host of The Big Show with Rusick and Rose on Sportsnet 690 The Fan in Yonder, Canada. Appreciate all their time. Additional thanks goes to the sponsor of this program, Desert Willow Golf Resort, just 3+ miles away from the Birds' home ice of Acrisure Arena. Make it a great putt-to-puck day. Get your swing on over at DW, whether it be the Mountain View or Firecliff course. Maybe when you're poking around at desertwillow.com, you want to check out the awesome and on-site Palm Desert Golf Academy, for all your swing tutelage and needs. Right on site, dedicated space at Desert Willow. Playoff intensity abounds. Firebirds friends can already feel it here early in round 2. Get those tickets. Still a few available. You can find them at cvfirebirds.com or the CV Firebirds app. Again, reminder of the schedule. Game 3 in these Pacific Division semifinals. CV versus the Calgary Wranglers. Game 3 this Wednesday, May 8th, 7 p.m. Followed by Game 4 this Friday, May 10th. Also 7 p.m. puck drop. If necessary, a deciding Game 5 will be played this Sunday, May 12th. That would be a 3 p.m. start. Let's get out there, show that home ice support, fill that bird barn with playoff enthusiasm. I think it's safe to say and state at this point that whatever you're going to see over the course of these next 2 or potentially 3 games, it's going to be tense. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be enthusiastic. It is going to be AHL Calder Cup playoff hockey performed at a very, very high level by 2 teams that decidedly want to advance to the next round. We'll look forward to seeing you in person over at Acrisure Arena, Firebirds friends. Thank you again for your interest, your time, for tuning in to the Fire and Ice podcast. Remember, as always, one valley, one team, rising together.